Okay, so hello. This is my game, Sausage Dog Turns to Infinity. For those of you who don't know, who haven't seen it on TikTok or Twitter or anything like that, it's a 3D puzzle game, which is, as you can probably already see, quite heavily inspired by Stephen Sausage Roll, but also by a number of other puzzle games like Snakebird and A Good Snowman is Hard to Build, and The Witness, obviously. I've been working on it for about 3 months now, and this is my first video devlog, video vlog, I guess. Um, and I just recently, over the last day or two, have been doing a little bit of playtesting with about 6 people. And it was for the first couple of areas in the game, which adds up to about an hour on average in gameplay. Give or take, some people managed to complete it in about half an hour, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, so I'd like to just first of all say a huge thank you to all of the playtesters for your time and your feedback, which has been hugely valuable to me. I really enjoyed watching you guys figure out how to solve the levels and watching different people with different sort of backgrounds to puzzle games. Some of you have played a lot of puzzle games before, some of you maybe not so much, taking different approaches to levels and taking longer on some levels compared to other people and shorter on other levels. I particularly enjoyed watching every single one of you fall into the trap on this level on the screen right now. I'm not going to show exactly what the trap is or the solution is because I don't want to spoil it for anyone else, but the playtesters know exactly what I'm talking about, and it was I had a nice laugh watching people fall for that, which was really nice. It was also quite funny to watch quite a number of you struggle to actually enter this level in the first place. Because a lot of you seems to be kind of like not exactly sure how to turn yourself around so you can match the line here, which kind of I found kind of amusing because that's something that I experienced a lot when playing Steven Sausage Roll. You know, even just moving around the world map in that game could often be quite tricky. So I definitely enjoyed that. That was definitely my intention. I also really enjoyed watching you guys play this level and figure out how to solve this level and figure out exactly what's going on in this level, because there's a lot, especially if you do this level sort of first or second in this area, there's a lot to take in all at once. But it was really nice to watch people figuring out all the little things that you can do in this level, just sort of through trial and error. So there were a few common points of feedback that cropped up across many or even all of you of the playtesters that played it, either directly through verbal feedback or just through watching me play. And so I thought I might just go through a few of them now. Well, I'm going to do my best not to spoil anything, just in case there's anyone that hasn't that's watching it that wasn't one of the playtesters. So the first one, and I don't think many of you really picked up on this directly, but I think it was kind of in the background a little bit, was that the player's shrinking animation once he completes a level is maybe a little bit too long and tedious. This is one thing that I'm not too sure on yet, I'm not decided on yet, because on the one hand I do really like the player shrinking animation quite a lot, because it gives the player sort of like a moment of respite after working, you know, to solve the level. It kind of gives them a chance to sort of breathe for a minute before they have to go back to solving more levels. And it also, I like the fact that it shows you directly the path that you took, like it retraces the path that you took, you know. So I might have to try and maybe just tweak the speed of that animation or something like that, we'll see. Another one that popped up a bit more commonly was the fact that when you're inside a level, it's not exactly clear how far back you can move without moving all the way back out of the level. So when you're on the world map and you haven't entered the level yet, you can see there's these sort of ghost-like outlines that look a bit like the player, and obviously you have to match up your body with one of them to enter a level. But then once you've entered that level, there's no longer any indicator of exactly where that first section of your line is. And so there was quite a lot of cases where people would want to sort of move back to the beginning of the level in order to try a different few moves at the beginning sort of thing, but would accidentally go one step too far. and would then come back out of the level and would have to re-enter it, sort of thing. Which is not, in each individual case, is not a huge deal, because moving back out of the level is just one extra step, and then entering the level is a quick, short animation. But I think it can definitely add up to enough to be annoying over time. So that's something I'm definitely going to address, which is that I'm probably going to have something like these outlines, these sort of ghostly outlines, just remain there, sort of just slightly bigger than the player, so you can see exactly where you can see exactly how far back you can undo, which is, I think, also very important, considering quite a lot of the levels solutions rely fairly heavily on the first few steps that you make. The first few steps are often really vital to solving quite a number of the levels, so I think that's one of the important visual design factors that I need to consider. Another maybe slightly more minor and background problem that can probably be fixed fairly easily with visual design is the exit points were maybe slightly visually confusing at first. I think one of the reasons for that is simply because the switches are yellow when they're off, and then when you activate all of them and the exit point becomes active, it turns yellow. It's like the same color as the buttons when they're off, so I think that can mislead people into thinking like maybe I have to put blocks on the exit points or something like that, so there's that. And there are also just a few other general things about the way that the exit points work exactly that maybe weren't made quite clear enough. I think they're definitely all things that the player can learn through trial and error in some of the levels, and probably will learn through trial and error in any case, but I think it's still worth keeping them in mind, and I think it's something that I would like to make sure the player understands kind of right away from the beginning, because it's not something, the interesting part of the game is not figuring out how the exit points work. So one of the things was whether or not you have to touch the exit point with only your head, like the front end of the line to exit, or whether you can touch it with another part of your body, like go over the exit point while it's not active yet, and then activate it and then exit the level. So that wasn't immediately obvious. And also whether or not you have to reach all of the endpoints as well to solve the level, or whether you can just reach one. So those are 2 points that I think I might try to maybe just slightly tweak a couple of the very early levels in order to more guide the player towards understanding exactly how they work. Another sort of visual communication thing that cropped up quite a few times when people were playing, especially in the second area, which I'm not going to show right now because I don't necessarily want to spoil it too much, but you can kind of get an idea here because there's some trees and stuff here, is that because of the perspective of the camera and the sort of the way the lighting is, like the angle of the light and stuff like that, it's often a bit tricky to tell exactly where things are in relation to each other on the y-axis or the z-axis, the depth axis, which became slightly problematic in the second area especially when you had the switches kind of floating one block above the player. It wasn't exactly clear, first of all, that they were even above the player, and also how far above the player they were. And I think partly the reason for that is because, well, partly because of what I said, because of the camera angle and the perspective and the sort of kind of lack of real shadows anywhere sort of useful anyway, and also because the switches are completely translucent and just completely matte coloured blocks that just kind of float in midair and don't cast a shadow or anything. So there's a few different things I can try, I think, to help with that. I think I'm definitely going to try and play around with different camera angles and perspectives, but also different options of lighting, texturing things, giving more variety to the textures, so that maybe stuff that's higher up have different textures than stuff that's lower down. Just stuff like that, just to help the player more easily distinguish what's where on the depth axis, and also to know exactly where they can go as well, because there were also a few cases where there might be sort of like a block one space above the player that they can actually walk underneath, but if you're not looking at it from the right angle, or if you're right next to it, it's really quite hard to see that there is even a block, that there is even a space underneath the block that you can walk through, which is obviously quite problematic for the level design itself. So, and just overall in general, there is a reasonable amount of trimming down and concisifying, I think that's a word, making concise a number of the levels that needs to be done. A couple of you actually managed to find a slightly more concise solution to this puzzle right here, which again I'm not going to show it, but the original solution that I had imagined and that I was working with actually uses every block that's on the screen right now, but I think two of you managed to find a solution to this that doesn't use all of the blocks. So it's just cases like that. It's just really testing every level very thoroughly, making sure that there aren't extraneous spaces and stuff like that that could mislead the player or misguide the player. I would say, however, that this is, in general, the primary ongoing design challenge that I've had and will continue to have that applies to every level that I design. It's very much a matter of finding the balance between having, on the one hand, having exactly the number of spaces that you need for a level and having no more than that, and so that whenever the player completes any level, he fills up every single space in that level and there's no space wasted in that sense. It's a balance. It's about striking a balance between that, I think, and at the other end, giving the player enough choices and enough extra little spaces that it's harder for them to stumble upon the solution by accident or by brute forcing. Because I don't want to end up in a situation where the player at any given moment only has one or two options of where they can move their player to next. Because, again, as I said, that greatly increases the chance of players stumbling upon solutions by accident. So I think it's just a balancing act, and I think it applies uniquely to each individual level. I think some levels benefit from being very much only having exactly the tiles that you need to use. I think this level that I just showed here is a prime example of that. Whereas I think there are some levels, especially the levels later on in the second area, that benefit from giving the player, as I said, extra choices and not exactly misleading the player, because I don't like that idea fundamentally, but making it so that it's not immediately obvious what the next step the player has to take is, because the nature of the game means that the puzzles are often fairly linear. Well, I mean, they are linear. There's no getting around it, because you have to, even though the way you work out might not be linear, at the end of the day, the solution that you have to draw is a single line that goes from one point to the end point. And so giving the player a little bit of extra options here and there in the right places, I think can help to slightly obfuscate the exact linear solution. But again, that's just a general, fairly high-level design problem that I have to contend with every level that I make, as I said, and it's something that I'm going to try and keep in mind as much as I can. And so there are a huge number of other things. I've got a massive list of notes from all of the playtesting, which has been very interesting and insightful to read through. But yeah, there's a whole host of other things that I could talk about. Minutiae of the way the player moves and the way certain things interact and stuff like that. But well, first of all, I don't really want to spoil anything. I want to spoil as little as possible. And also I don't want this to go on for too long. So yeah, that's it, I guess. Thanks, and once again, thank you so much to all the playtesters. It's been very valuable and very helpful, and I look forward to sending out the builds, the next playtesting build, whatever that might be, which is probably going to be quite a while now. But yeah, thanks. Bye.